Let's see if we got a signal here. It's Steve, the guardrail guy. Anyone joining me this morning? Last live, I think we had 181,000 unique folks jump on there. Good morning. I'm on US 321 in Loudoun County, Tennessee. We're just going to go for a walk along the guardrails. We'll see if we get somebody on here in a second. I'll flip you around and we'll go start our walk. All right. Well, I'm going to start my walk regardless. Good morning, Steve. Thought I'd try another live. We had 181,000 folks on the last one. And I'm just going to walk across US 321 Fort Loudoun Dam Bridge. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. First thing I want to show is this sign. This is an issue that I'm really getting after the department. We have design drawings that our signs should be offset 4 feet from the rail. Clearly, we are attached to the guardrail post, and so it's no longer breakaway. And you know what, it's, if you have a red line or a deviation within your design drawings, but you deviate every single installation from your design drawings, you don't have a red line. I'm just out for a walk. I'm going to walk across Fort Loudoun Dam. So, but if you have a deviation from your red line, and it's every single sign, you have no design drawings. You don't have a standard. You just so damage. That's very low level damage that if I report that, I would just get nowhere. So leave that one alone. But again, so here's a sign that is 4 feet from the guardrail face to the post. Ironically, it's done the right way. The wrong way sign has been installed right. But breakaway might be a little high. So I talked about this in the live on Monday that I did, that 181,000 people joined in on. We have a guardrail repair that happened here, and we have this is another. I've been pulling the design drawings from TDOT lately, and this is a panel that's called SGRS 4. It's a 25-foot transition that allows you to go from 31 to 28-inch rail, and you drop about 4 inches. And the issue is rather than use brand new rail, they're reusing the old rail and field drilling the hole. Had they used a new rail, it would have had a hole there. Yesterday, just going for a walk. But yesterday I actually discovered on a recent fatality that occurred in, it was the 9X fatal in West Palm Beach. Multiple issues in that crash, ranging from driver choices, it appears lack of product support from Payless car rentals, designs with the road, issues with the guardrail, issues with signs and lines. But one of the things I discovered in that West Palm Beach crash was that at the point of impact, there appeared to have been a field drilled hole. Would have it made a difference? I don't know, but I don't want to take the last 1 or 2% of survivability away from the potential victims. So that was that West Palm Beach fatal crash with a field drilled hole. Last year, people say, do you look at crashes beyond Tennessee? Yeah, absolutely. There was a similar crash, not a similar crash, but a similar catastrophic fatal incident in the wine country of Australia. A bus hit guardrail, came into the passenger compartment, And at the exact point of impact, there was also a field trip hole. Did it make the difference, the final bit of difference? I don't know. The underlying issue, though, is that we want to do it right 100% of the time. I've said it before. I don't care if an airplane hits a guardrail. I want it installed right. I don't expect it to perform. It's a pretty flower. What's that? Anyways, let's see if we see any wildlife. I'll talk about this here. This is the MSKT. Pretty decent system. But this here is the most common installation and maintenance error in America today. And it's one that we could easily correct it, because that's a little taut now, but in the afternoon it will be slackened up. So this post is an upper post that's attached to a lower post, and the same exact post is used in the M-Beat, M-Fleet, and the MSKT. In the MSKT, you can see they use a zip tie, a metal zip tie that goes around the post one lower, or post one upper, excuse me. And that thing, it can't hold it. So what we could do, now you'd have to go to your engineering folks, and it's tightened by a steel zip tie. And it goes around, and gravity, it's 5 on the top, 3 on the bottom. But I once heard some folks say every building has one common characteristic, and that is that they're all falling down. And it's our job to keep them upright. So one thing that would be a real improvement is, instead of passing the zip tie all the way around the post, is to take that zip tie and pass it through that piece of angle iron and pull it taut there. It's not a perfect solution, because yes, a zip tie, it can snap any number of different things. Gosh, it's just not the best solution. But if we did pass the zip tie through that, it would give us a better option. Long term, the real answer is to drill a hole through there, drill a hole through that post, and pass a bolt through this post one upper. It's there've been 14 crash tests of that exact scenario using the M-Beat and the M-Fleet, and so we have hundreds of thousands of these MSKTs that have been installed around the United States with this bearing plate. And the bearing plate is very critical. The orientation of that bearing plate is very critical to the performance of this device. It's probably, I don't think I could tie any single death to a bearing plate that gets all cattywampus. But my concern is there's a tipping point, but there's a true tipping point. You know, if you go 89.9 degrees, you're going to land back on your wheels. But if you go 90.1, you're going over. And the minute you go that last 0.2 degrees, or is it 0 point? Anyways, whatever. The point is, at some point you flip over, and when you flip over, the probability of you dying in that crash goes up multiple fold. So what I want to do is, I want to give you every last percentage possible to survive a crash. So I would love to see that bolt pass through there. And really the key to that happening is if a state DOT were to reach out to road systems and say, listen, we would like you to make this change. That would happen. I guarantee you. If a state DOT says, hey, listen, you've run 14 tests, including tests at higher impact angles that are more critical of this post and other products, we want that change made. It would be made. And we would fix the single most common installation error in the United States today. It's also a maintenance issue. When you have to go out and correct a bearing plate, you're putting a worker into harm's way. Let's go ahead and continue on our walk Steve Eimers. I'm the guardrail guy. I am walking on US 321, and I'm going to walk across Fort Loudoun Dam. It's a good chance we'll see some wild turkeys today. We'll definitely see some just plain turkeys right here. Sorry. We'll talk about the signs, we'll talk about lines, we'll talk about various things. We have a football game tonight. I used to be a Buffalo Bills fan, but I've gotten disinterested in football over the years because I guess if I want to get preached at, I'll go to church. I just want to watch a football game. I just want to watch a baseball game. Anyways, walking on US 321. The speed limit here is 45, but that's kind of like the pirate code from Pirates of the Caribbean. It's merely a suggestion. I'll talk about a very common cause of guardrail crashes is what you're seeing right here. We have drainage areas that have been clogged up, creates pooling water, and I have a fatality that I was recently taking a look at in Louisville, Kentucky. Without a doubt, it was a pooling water issue, and that's what set off the chain of events that ultimately led to the death. Steve is the embodiment of a man. You text my wife and you tell her that. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you. That's some kind words. So here's a sign. I'm pretty sure that's that wrong way sign is installed the wrong way. It's too low. You want to see that up a little higher. Our design drawings are pretty clear on that. I think it's a shame to get your head cut off because somebody put the sign a couple feet too low. We'll take a look at these next 3 runs of guardrail. These are ones that I would really love to see be removed because I don't see a real hazard. I mean, there's, you're going to go off the road, but going off the road is not the end of the world if you have adequate runout. And there's no significant hazards here. Yeah, there's a little dip here, but this guardrail's not been hit in 25 years with any substantial hits. That doesn't mean, Fort Knox hasn't been robbed in 100 years. But there's not a significant hazard here. And guardrail is itself a hazard. Anytime you put it in, you got to do basic math, which is, does this increase the probability of a death or does it decrease the probability of the death? Because a motorcyclist coming through here who went into a slide, you just get road rash. But if you hit that post, he's going to get cut in half, lose his leg. Without a tourniquet, he's going to die right there. So let's take a look at some of these other questions. It's a shame that no one takes responsibility to fix something as critical as roads. Yeah, that's one of the things. I've had a lot of people. I had one person at a DOT recently tell me, hey, you're the guy that gets to focus on just the light switches, but we have to focus on the whole house. Let me ask you a question. If you think you could go into a house where all the light switches were completely messed up, are you telling me you don't think the foundation is also messed up? Or that all the electrical work isn't messed up, or the roof isn't messed up, or the trusses aren't messed up? Come on, if you make that many mistakes on guardrail, the same mistakes are being made in your drainage, they're being made in your pavement, they're being made with your curves. I got those curbs, not curves. I got those curbs corrected after several years of effort. But again, here's an issue. that I was talking about. I see another question that's popped up. I'll take a look at that in a second. But that wrong way sign, it's installed the wrong way. And I talked about earlier, our design drawings in the state of Tennessee are really crystal clear that that sign should be offset at least 4 feet from the road. Instead, they've put it within the deflection zone, and then rather than using a breakaway device, they fixed it to a 6 foot by 9 pound per foot I-beam strong post guardrail post. And I get that, sometimes you run into a situation where you have to use your best judgment. You could have, if that was the situation, which he could have put that thing anywhere here. They chose not to. But when you have a red line or you have a deviation from your standard, but you deviate here, 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 and there, that's not a deviation. You have no standard at all when you just install every last thing wrong. So the wrong way sign, installed the wrong way, should be a breakaway structure. It's fixed to the I-beam post. And so I'll tell you a quick story. A lot of folks at TDOT, most of them just either don't know who I am, or they're just, regular folks, and some like me, some don't like me, because that's just life. Some people like you, some people don't. Some of the senior management does not like me, actively undermines me, and then there's some of them that are pretty nice to me. One of them is a guy named Mark Nagy. Mark's a really decent guy. Another sign installed wrong right there. But Mark sent him a location. It was a guardrail end terminal. The head was all just, at an angle. It had been hit clearly, just slightly, with a tear. But a tear, let me show you real quick on this guardrail. So a tear going, I'm going to be less concerned about a tear, well, that long of a tear I'm going to be concerned about, but a tear this way is less of a concern to me than a tear going that way. And it's actually not less of a concern to me. I've read the NCHRP report 638, and it's that latter, or the tear going this way is less likely to result in a catastrophic rupture, but one going this way, I'm surely going to tear. And I got an email, and he said, hey, yeah, we're going to get that fixed, but yeah, it's just minimal damage. Minimal damage doesn't mean minimal danger or minimum risk. It just means you don't see much of the damage. That's within 4 feet. Not as bad as the rest of them. But minimal damage does not mean minimal safety risk or danger. It just means the amount of damage is very little. So minimal damage can be really, really critical and really, really dangerous. Here we have another sign attached to the post. It's no longer breakaway. That up there is potential to, and it's Lazy Acres RV Park, 1 mile. So we've attached a sign that just says, hey, there's an RV park up here in a mile. And seriously, that you want to lose your life over Lazy Acres RV Park? We have another sign fixed with 3 bolts to the I-beam post. And that's just it's a scenic route. Our scenic route, that's a pretty sunrise, is attached to the I-beam post, and it's no longer breakaway. You don't just beat it to fit, paint it to match. All right, so here we have a Trinity ET-Plus. The Trinity ET-Plus is really controversial. I'll talk about this for a minute here. I see here we have, I had some big YouTuber and TikToker who does geocaches tag me, but I leave those alone as long as they're not really interfering. But the Trinity ET-Plus, this is the 4-inch modified feeder chute that has gotten so much attention. It's very controversial. Yeah, that's material to why. I'm going to get the next questions here in a second, but that's material to why this system, I don't really, I've seen so many fatalities with it. But that's more of a sign of the bigger issues that I have found. So, the 4-inch, yes, it's a problem. I don't think it's the biggest problem, but it is a big problem. This bearing plate can be an issue. It can give you a little bit of instability because this one has tabs that keep it oriented, which are nice add-on, but sometimes that gets a little off and it just doesn't work right. So again here, you see how the impact head, it's offset this way. I think that's an issue. I'd prefer an impact head that's more centered on the rail, but that's not the biggest issue. It is an issue. This is a pretty big issue, is these flanges. You'll see on the SCAT, you'll see on the ET-2000, the SKT, MSKT, that there's also a flange there and flange there. It grabs in the vehicle on the impact a whole lot better, in my opinion. Surface area of this impact head is just too small compared to the other devices, in my opinion. But I think the biggest problem is related to this exit gate right there. And what happens is, and these splice bolts. Check that out, folks. That one's loose. Anyways, that one's loose, but those splice bolts are about 1.5 inches, and that's 1 inch. Anyone go to kindergarten? It's a square peg in a round hole, and I've seen it. I had a crash up here that I caught on camera. You can actually feel the indentations where the bolts get locked up there and there, and it stops the vehicle like instantly. It creates a scenario where there's a ton of instability at that point. You can roll over, which greatly increases the probability of a fatality. You can have an uncontrolled gating where you go through and you hit a big tree or whatever, a lake or whatever, or that rail creates one kink and two kinks. That comes around, goes into the vehicle, either straight through the firewall or through a passenger door, or through the path of least resistance. And if it misses you, you're fine. But if it hits you, it can cut you in half or cut your leg off, like my friend, or it can just mutilate you. The other issue is, I've seen the rail, I don't like this window. I prefer another section right there that keeps the rail kind of fixed in the feeder chute. The other thing that's really big, if you hit this, if we have our vehicle coming in and you hit on the, right on the headlight there on the passenger side, right here, and you're moving forward, your kinetic energy is taking you forward, the rail is feeding into that chute and coming out and being extruded there, flattened. But what can happen is late in the event, especially, it's very pronounced with a sedan, is that this turns. And if this here is on the right headlight and this pivots this way, it then gives you an exposed blunt end that comes directly into the firewall, usually right through the steering column, and behind the steering column is the driver, and it's really ugly. It's usually a fatality. So you'll notice in the SGET, in the soft stop, in the MSKT and the SKT, the new M Fleet, this feeder chute on the MSKT is 7 feet. On the SGET is, I forget the exact measurement, but it's further down. So when that hinges, and now it's that part is what is against the front of the vehicle. This rail that's now kinked goes behind the vehicle, beside the vehicle, versus right into the firewall and right into the driver. So those are the big issues with that I've found with the ET-Plus. The other thing that I talked about these splice bolts. This is a 25-foot rail. I find the problems with this are much greater when you move the splice up to 12.5 feet, because it creates that event, that secondary event within your larger event earlier in the crash, and that when there's more kinetic energy in the vehicle, and then the kinetic energy kills. But that's the ET-Plus. It's been implicated in hundreds of mutilating spearings. They've settled a fraud claim with the state of Missouri for $56 million. They settled a fraud claim with the state of Massachusetts for $5 million. If you ever know anyone who hits a guardrail and is injured, seriously injured, or killed, have them contact an attorney. You got to take a look. You got to look at, because I can tell you with this system, the 4-inch system, I have an email. I got a lot of folks. Let me turn this around. There's a lot of really decent folks in this industry with not a lot of courage. And then there's me, who I'm ready to stare them hell with a water pistol. And I got an email that had been kicking around since 2005. It's related to 5 crash tests of this system, and it includes a number of people in Trinity Industries, and they talk about it. And the thing for me is there's a quote. There was some performance concerns, and it almost speared the vehicle in the passenger door. And they say, "What is our liability?" That guy is way off the road. Anyways, they say, what will our liability be when somebody is killed or maimed? If this, and it was very clear. They knew in 2005 that they had a spearing potential defect and dismissed it away. And since that time, I would guess a couple hundred people have been killed or mutilated. That is morally repulsive. Anyways, let's continue on our walk. Steve the guardrail guy here. I'm going to read this question. Potholes definitely cost lives here in the UK from tire blowouts. Yeah, anything that causes vehicle instability. I guess there's a Steve the guardrail guy, but he's somebody, the pothole guy in India. I've seen a couple of stories about him, and I've had lots of people tag me about it. Potholes are dangerous. Anything that causes vehicle instability, and I'll show you something kind of cool. Well, it's not cool, it's kind of dangerous, and it's actually resulted in a fatality. But I'll show you that once we get up over the dam. This is TVA undeveloped property. Tennessee Valley Authority has a number of dams in East Tennessee, so I have folks joining me from the UK. Tennessee, I'm full of useless trivia. I don't know where it'll ever come in hand, but Tennessee, due to our dam lakes, not dammed lakes, well, they are dammed lakes, but not with an N. We have so many reservoirs, and those reservoirs have all kinds of little fingers. We have more shoreline reportedly than any other lake, but it has to do with our lakes going and going into all these little valleys and just creating miles and miles and miles and hundreds of miles of shoreline. Anyways, I'm gonna walk across this first bridge. Stay in your lane. So here's a guardrail I got. Let me flip this around. So here's a guardrail. I got this changed. You can see there was supposed to be a turnaround there, but the runout length, so you have your end terminal, which is your first 50 feet. You have your beginning of the length of need. That's when your end terminal will begin to redirect it. That's at 12.5 feet. But your runout guardrail is the amount of guardrail needed that if you hit that in a gating scenario, which means you hit the impact head and go behind it into the clear zone. Unfortunately, the clear zone here includes this road. You have to have, it's hundreds of feet. and this is one of the issues I documented in a fatal crash earlier this week. It's never... I've had it happen twice this year where I went to a location, I called out a deviation from the Tennessee DOT standard drawings, and I said, somebody's going to die here. Earlier this year, it was up on Calderwood Highway. I stood up on a guardrail, and they said, oh, you're just grandstanding. I said, what's going to happen when this unbolted guardrail, somebody hits it and goes into this lake and dies? And 7 days later, young kid, 18 years old, went into Calderwood Highway, about a mile down the road, unbolted guardrail, and he died. Earlier, it was about 2 weeks ago, Interstate 640 in Knoxville was just recently turned back to the state from a project, and they hadn't calculated their runout length. That's the distance from the impact head to our hazard. We have an elephant trap. I'll go into that in a second. And I said, you guys didn't recalculate your runout lengths on this project. Somebody's gonna hit the guardrail, they're gonna pass behind it and go into the hazard. And 13 days later, after I sent that email to the lieutenant governor and multiple state senators and representatives, 2 people traveling through Tennessee from the state of Florida got off at I-40 going east, at I-640 east and 75 north, headed towards Kentucky. They hit an impact head, a very safe guardrail, an SCAT. But there was only about 50, actually there was no runout length, there was just the terminal. They hit it, went directly into the bridge pillar, and 2 people were dead right there. I don't get to spike the football. I don't get to say, I was right. No, we had 2 people that were dead. I was right, and they installed it without runout length calculations, the deviation from their standard drawings, and the same scenario could happen today. But anyways, initially the guardrail was right about here. You can see it's been extended several hundred feet. I think that's my family driving by, but hey! Anyways, that's an elephant trap. So we have an area between 2 bridges. If you go over it, it's such a big drop that it's a trap that could kill an elephant. And so we want to see enough distance that you have time to stop, that you have time to come to a stop before going over the elephant trap. Because you go over that elephant trap, buckled or not buckled, sober or not sober. I don't care if you're Mother Teresa or Al Capone. You go over that elephant trap, good chance you're going to die. So I was able to get them to remove the guardrail, add all of this guardrail, and put the end terminal up there. We lost the turnaround, but frankly, this is one location where I think that by moving it this direction, that 150 plus feet, we're going to save a life guaranteed in the next 10 years. Somebody is not going to die at this location because I pressured them to move that end terminal further down and comply with their design drawings. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. So we're going to walk over. I talked with this on the earlier live stream earlier this week about this area. It's actually a canal that was dug. The Little Tennessee River is off to my left, and you'll get a clear picture. This is the Tennessee River. You head up this way, you'll get into Knoxville and Neyland. What is it, folks? Anyways, the football stadium. But down here, this is Bustle Island. Hernando de Soto actually came through this area. He was a conquistador, a Spanish explorer, and he kidnapped, they weren't Cherokee, but it was earlier, I forget what kind of, Cost, I think, a Cost Indian tribe. They kidnapped the chief, and he secured his safe passage across the state of Tennessee, or what was Tanasi. Tellico Village, which is a large retirement community, has a golf course, Tanasi, but that's where the word Tennessee comes out of that. Native American word tenacity. Anyway, so this is Fort Loudoun Lake over here. This is Tellico Lake on this side with the canal right there. We'll continue walking. I'm going to walk across this bridge. Keep my eyes open because I've had a couple incidents up here. Not generally with somebody leaving the roadway, but I've had a couple of people, especially the larger my platform has gotten, they may recognize me and they think it's funny I've gotten gassed up here with a diesel truck right in front of a THP trooper. And she wasn't paying attention, but I was just standing here walking back this way, and they got real close, and then they let loose with a huge diesel cloud. You know, that's just assault. I don't care. That's just nonsense. But we have a Jersey barrier, and a person asked me about concrete barrier. I'm a fan of concrete barrier, especially on bridge rail, because the consequences of going 85 feet over this into that water is certain death. The other thing is, in narrow medians, the deflection zone on W-beam guardrail, cable barrier, double-sided W-beam, it's just too far. You don't have that much real estate, so you have to use concrete. Generally, when concrete is hit, you don't have to go back and make a repair. Sometimes you do. But the other thing is, what made me a bigger fan of concrete, and especially where you have a lot of motorcycles and a lot of motorcycle crashes and you need a longitudinal barrier, or a barrier that runs parallel to the road, that'd be cable barrier, that would be anything that you're using as a fence, W-beam guardrail, concrete, any longitudinal barrier. Your post and beam barriers, that's your W-beam, your cable, a fence, anything with posts kills motorcyclists. The fatality rate involving concrete is, when I looked at the number of fatalities, I looked at about 502 fatalities over a 12-year period in the state of Tennessee involving longitudinal barriers, bridge rails, and various things like that, crash cushions, and for your post and beam barriers was about 1/3 of all the deaths. So up here we have W-beam, post and beam longitudinal barriers. About 1/3 of those deaths were motorcyclists. With concrete, it was less than 10. It's going to be a really bad day if you go down on a bike at all. It's going to be a really bad day, and a very high probability you're going to die if you hit this concrete. If you hit a post and beam guardrail, your life will forever be altered if you're on a motorcycle. So I am a fan of concrete barrier. The lifetime cost, if your traffic volume is high enough and you get a lot of damage, it's going to pay off. The difficulty is in lower traffic volume areas and in areas where rural communities. You just can't justify it economically in most situations. Take a look there. You see it? You see what I'm seeing? We had a crash there. You can see the tire came up and got up to there. They would have gone 30 or 40 feet over. Now that is certainly at least one life saved. Everyone in that car, their life was saved. So I'm going to get onto this bike path over here and show you a few things. I'm walking across. I wanted to show you what I wanted. The big fight I'm having right now with TDOT is related to repairs on state right-of-ways. So the road is owned by a local municipality, But the guardrail was bought and paid for and installed by the Tennessee DOT. Now the guardrail gets damaged, and Tennessee DOT is trying to pass the repair costs, the maintenance costs, onto the local municipalities. One of the most common complaints in the state of Tennessee, and I'm fighting this in Wilson County, Knox County, Loudoun County, Smith County, McMinn County. It's a problem everywhere where they install the guardrail onto a local municipality road, but within their right-of-way, gets damaged, and then they don't want to fix it. And what I'm trying to do, I'll be real candid, is get the local municipalities and the local state representatives and senators on my side. And if I win that battle, I'm telling you, I will be one of the most popular guys in the state of Tennessee when it comes to local municipalities, because it's a really big problem. So here's something I'll talk to you about. Always check both ways. Now this is you can only go one direction. And I saved my life one day right here because I always check. So I'm keeping a close eye this direction. But I look this way too. And I went ahead and checked one day, and I kid you not, somebody missed this exit, and they took the on-ramp and almost ran me over, but I was paying attention. Life is not very safe as a pedestrian. We do not prioritize pedestrian lives in America. Again, I check this way, even though nobody should be coming up that direction. Just because nobody should be doing it doesn't mean you're not going to end up dead. All right, we got another sign that is a wrong way sign. It's installed the wrong way. I've got the T-Dot design drawings, and so do they. That sign right there has to be 4 feet outside of the deflection zone of that guardrail, so it's going to force you to put it here just a little bit higher. And you can see they did it with these other signs up here, but what's happened is that one got damaged at some point, and they don't want to climb over that fence and put it at the safe spot. It's just pure laziness most of the time. Now this is a new project. This is one of the silliest things I've ever seen. This is brand new, $70-some million project. Replaced the bridge I just walked over, added the bridge. They didn't replace the other one. Replaced a bridge that was up here on the dam and did a bridge over the railroad. And they built a wicked S-curve into their brand new $70-some million project. And I remember I emailed them and said, what are you thinking? And they said, we did our design drawings, we believe it's safe. And there have been about 15 to 20 crashes in the S-curve, including 2 catastrophic K&A level crashes. One of them was a fatality. It was awful. It was a motorcyclist in the death curve, in the S-curve up here. And I ended up having to go buy hydrogen peroxide to clean out the road. That's how bad it was. I wasn't about to let his family come out here and see what was remaining. Anyways, I'm on a pedestrian path that's almost never used because it's very dangerous to get here. This is Fort Loudoun Dam right here. What's funny is I was just a little kid living in New York, Western New York, and apparently I ended up here in East Tennessee. There's a picture of me though up on that hill across the way when I was about 3 years old. Morning. I've got a picture here from years ago. So let me flip this back around. Again, I was talking about the signs, 4 feet of lateral deflection, a We've got about 6 to 8 inches. Another sign. So again, you know, sometimes you get a situation where you have to do something. Your engineer comes in and says, hey, listen, this is the way we're going to do it. It's just the way we're going to have to do it because the real estate. Now here is a hit. Let's see. It's Fort Loudoun Dam. I do not see a repair sticker. I'll go ahead and report that one a little bit later. You can see where it hit. And you know, that is a life save because that is about 100-foot drop off. Had that rail not been there and they continued and not recovered, they're going over, and that's going to be about probably 8 to 10 barrel rolls. I'll report that one. If anyone else wants to report it, this is US 321. You're headed south, but it's actually 321 north. I don't know why they did that. State Route 73 on the Fort Loudoun Dam. It's guardrail face damage. I'll report it a little later, but if somebody wants to go to tn.gov, the maintenance app, and report it, choose guardrail, let me know in the comments if somebody does that. We have another wrong way sign installed the wrong way. Their design drawings. One of the things people say, well, what gives you the right to say it was installed wrong? No, I have their design drawings and it says must be 4 feet. Plus, I took this issue to the former Deputy Commissioner Paul Daggs, and Daggs told me outright it's got to be 4 feet. We don't install them next to the guardrail within 4 feet. Anyone think that that's the truth? How many of these have I showed you today already? Let's continue on. Let me see, do I have any comments here? All right, potholes. Hey, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. It's Steve. We're just out for a walk. I'll flip this. I've got you flipped around. I'll zoom in if I see a turkey. I see lots of turkeys here. The dam is right here. I'll tell you a funny story. I was seeing all kinds of fish up here, and we get a lot of fishermen. And I could not figure out, why do I keep finding fish like on the guardrail? Big fish, especially. Why do I find, I mean, come on, why are you throwing your fish out the window while you're driving? We have a massive osprey, which is a bird of prey population, and a couple of breeding bald eagles here. And they fish up at the dam, and the bigger the fish is, they periodically will drop them. And I have found fish all over. It's like Sharknado. We had an incident about 25 miles from here in Kingston, Tennessee. You can Google it. The fish was dropped by either an eagle or an osprey, and it fell at the perfect point in time, hit the grill of the car, and went into the radiator and into the engine block, and actually caused enough damage that it stopped the vehicle. It's Kingston, Tennessee, fish, I-40. I Google it, you'll find it. But so we have our own little version of Sharknado here in Tennessee. So here we have, this is an issue I've seen multiple fatalities with. You see that wire? You ever jump over a chain link fence like that? Well, I did that as a kid. And there's usually a pole that runs along the top here. But when you're installing a fence adjacent to a roadway, you use a tensioned wire, because that tensioned wire, once you hit this, it just is, you're fine. But that post, when you have a pipe up there, that will go through somebody's head. And I've seen it happen multiple times. I had an x-ray that I was looking at, and there's a pipe right through the guy's head, and somehow he lived. He's blind, he's not good, he's alive, but that right there is a huge deal. That right there saves a ton of lives on our roadways. So if you ever see a pipe adjacent to a road, you got a real problem. So I've got a fatality right here. Right here. Where is it? It's right where I'm at. So what happened is, and I'll show you in a minute, it's a neat forensic kind of thing, but right up there, you can see the curve. The motorcyclist was over here at the Calhoun's restaurant. He was from Arizona. We're in Tennessee, unfamiliar with this area, never driven this road. Smoky Mountain Harley Davidson is up here. The Tail of the Dragon, which is the most iconic road course in America with 330 curves and 11 miles, is right up here. But, so he had 2 drinks, from what I understand. So he had a little alcohol in him. He's not familiar with it. This is a road that's designed at 70 miles an hour, posted speed 40, and he comes up and there's a defect in the road, induces instability. He goes into a slide, he hits these posts, and he is dead right there. So a bunch of things, no warnings of the curve ahead until you're in the curve, but a bunch of bad things went wrong that day, and he ended up dead right here. You know, I have little to no sympathy for people who drive under the influence of alcohol. When I was a nurse, I remember very early on, little kid I was taking care of in Jamestown, New York. Both parents were dead. So was the drunk driver, triple fatal. This kid's orphan, so I don't have a lot of sympathy. I just don't think we should summarily execute him with guardrails. And he was not drunk. He had had a few drinks. But there's an inherent defect in the roadway design. Posts and beam guardrails we know are dangerous, but I'll take you up here and I'll show you. You see, watch these vehicles as they come off the bridge and onto the pavement. You see that bounce? You see the bounce? Can you see them bouncing? Right as you get to the end. That's a ton of instability introduced into these vehicles right as you're coming off the bridge and into the death curve. So he's coming across the bridge, and keep an eye on this vehicle. Watch him bounce. Ready? 1, 2, 3, now. You see that that action? Well, what happened is when they built this bridge, they didn't give us there's a roadway defect, a pavement defect. And can you see those 2 black lines? Anytime, that's an oil slick. So the vehicle comes off, boom. There's oil on the engine. That oil gets shaken loose. And the forward momentum, it's kind of like if you shoot a bullet and drop it. I forget what that effect is, but they will hit the ground at the same time. But the forward momentum, it starts dropping up there, and it gets deposited in the roadway right there. When you see that, you have a defect in your road. What happened with that motorcyclist, again, here is the first warning of the curve as you enter the curve. He was from out of town, was not familiar with the road, had 2 beers, was going 60 in a 40, comes off, he hits the instability, goes into a slide, he's in a death curve that's designed in a brand new road, hits the post and beam guardrail. That's how a bunch of stupid decisions adds up to. None of us is as dumb as all of us, is what I've always heard. And he ended up dead right up there. Let's continue on. Going on to the actual bridge over the Tennessee River. We have an osprey headed down. No, that's an osprey. Headed downriver now. Maybe we'll see a bald eagle. We'll probably see a lot of blue herons. Heron, O-N, not I-N-G, like the fish. I got to tell you a story. So I was fishing up here, and this one joker, he snags a great blue heron. Beautiful bird. They love to fish, too. And snags it with his hook. And he's drowning it, finally. Wish I'd had the courage. Some guy goes up, he takes his knife, cuts his line, and tells him what he thinks of it. And I managed to get this bird in on the fishing line, and it's really hurt. And I call my friend, the game warden, and I'm like, Anthony, I've got this blue heron. He's like, Steve, it's not an endangered bird. I can come out and cite the guy, but we don't have enough evidence to convict him. But if you want to take it to UT Animal Hospital, they're going to charge you. I thought, well, let me take it home. I've got a dog kennel. So I get this blue heron, and they have a very sharp beak. And I'm holding it. You want to talk about driving distracted. Holding this blue heron. I hadn't left the parking lot, so I wasn't quite distracted that bad. But that thing takes that beak and, I swear, hits right between my eyes, and blood is just pouring down. I would have lost an eye. But if you ever pick up a blue heron, control the beak, it'll kill you. Oh goodness. Then there's some bird that got smoked up here. It looks like a Canada goose. Canada, not Canadian. I grew up south of Buffalo. And it's a Canada goose, not a Canadian goose. So here, this is something that causes a lot of crashes. Is we have a drain, it's clogged, the water can't get off the roadway. I don't see any impacts on that side, but when you mess with the drainage, you get into a lot of problems. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, I'll just continue talking. This is the Tennessee River, and that is Fort Loudon Dam up there. And I talked about Mussel Island, where Hernando de Soto came through in the 1500s and secured his passage by kidnapping the Cost Indian chief across the state of Tennessee, which was then Tanasi, T-A-N-A-S-I. Hey, hi there, Claiborne Hauling. A lot of your ground, your dirt and stuff in East Tennessee on these projects is moved by these folks from Claiborne. But we're going across the bridge. I had a fellow who talked to me and said, hey, do you ever inspect my aluminum bridge railings? And yeah, I'm up here. The one place I did inspect it, report damage to this aluminum handrail that goes above the concrete, is the New River Gorge Bridge. It had been hit, and there was a whole section and had an exposed blunt end. So that was kind of cool, reporting damaged guardrail on that very iconic American bridge, the one where they all jump off a couple times a year into the gorge. It's up in West Virginia. But we're coming across Fort Loudon Dam. We've got a lot of migratory birds come through this area. A lot of wildlife. Sorry, it's so loud up here on the bridge. Posted speed limit up here is 40. I have a radar gun, and I'll come on like, I'll get 70, 80, 100 mile an hour. Amazon opened a warehouse up here, and their drivers, they put about 50 to 100 trucks through here. And those trucks, 80,000 pounds, doing 60 miles an hour and a 40 through our community. So Bezos, we don't appreciate that. But again, we have an issue here that can cause some problems, which is your drainage, leads to collisions into the wall. Okay, so we have a new question. Let's see. Oh no, that's still our friends from the UK asking about potholes. So we're going to come off the bridge. I'll show you bridge transition. So this is a rigid structure. This is concrete. and it's rigid. It's not going anywhere typically in a crash. Across the way is another type of concrete barrier. We have no real estate between the lanes, so to prevent the crossover, you use a concrete barrier there. But when you are transitioning from W-beam guardrail to concrete, W-beam, it's really a good idea to think of it as a fluid. It's got about, don't go kicking it or try, it's not that fluid. It's not that semi-rigid. But when you hit, so here we have an MGS rail, which means you have mid-rail splices, 31-inch height. This has an 8-inch block out. It can be 12 inches, that's preferable. We're trying to keep you from hitting your wheel hitting the post and inducing a rollover. But this will, you hit right there, it's going to move back up to 4 feet. That concrete bridge is not going anywhere. So if you hit right here and you go in 4 feet, this was historically called the coffin corner. And because you'd be deflecting and then hit this head on, and you would be dead right there. And it was a huge problem with lots of fatalities. And it wasn't until I started monitoring crashes in Brazil that I learned how important this piece of safety equipment, and you're looking at a very, very important piece of safety equipment here, is we don't get a lot of fatalities here at the coffin corner. Brazil gets a ton. And so we have 4 feet of lateral deflection, no feet of lateral deflection there. So in this 25 feet, you have a single W-beam panel. We go from a post here. Now 6.5 feet later, we have a post. Now we're cut down to 3 feet. 3 feet, 3 feet. Now we're nesting our rail for the next 12.5 feet. And now 3 feet, we got a rub rail down here. Some folks will use a tri-beam transition here. Now we're down to 3 feet. And now our spacing is getting closer and closer. And you can see how thick these I-beams are here. Much thicker I-beams than the 6-inch. That's probably an 8.5-pound I-beam, and that is, I don't know my weights too well. I'm sorry on my I-beam posts. But anyways, what that does is our deflection goes from about 4 feet up here. So it pushes in this way when you hit it. 4 feet on the W-beam. And it falls off to up here where you're less than about a foot of lateral deflection, so you don't hit the coffin corner. And if you hit the coffin corner, it's a sudden force stop. You're likely going to, what you're going to do is you're probably going to fracture C1 and C2. That's your cervical vertebrae. And I'm a nurse by training. I worked out at Mayo. I once worked a detail to the president back in '96 as an EMT. I worked in the ER. I did infusion therapy. But C1, C2 is your top 2 cervical vertebrae. You hit that, good chance you're doing that. There's also right on your heart, left side. It'll lacerate your aorta. Your heart just moves forward and it just tears. Everything bleeds out. You're dead within a couple seconds. You're a beautiful looking victim. Yeah, I mean, full open casket, no problem, but you're dead right there because you're just, it's off. But let's flip this around. The coffin corner is a big one. Trailing end anchors. I had a situation like this. Now this is a trailing end. So you have a beginning, a middle, and an end of a guardrail. Both the beginning and the end need to be anchored. They need to be tethered to the ground. And out in near LA, there were 4 United States Marines. Left Camp Pendleton, they're up in the LA area, and they hit the guardrail and it ruptures, and they go into a bridge and they're all killed. They're all incinerated. This is like something you would see in Iraq or Afghanistan. Marines hit an IED and they get blown up. They're on an American highway. They've left Camp Pendleton down near San Diego. They're up in LA, and they hit a guardrail in America and they get basically IED type injuries. I go and I start looking at the Google Street View. I take a look at the timestamps, the trailing end anchor, like what you see here. This one's okay, but the trailing end anchor has been fractured down at the bottom, so it's completely unanchored, so it doesn't allow for the redirection in the rail. They go through the rail, the anchor fails. We have 4 United States Marines incinerated on an American roadway because we had a guardrail that was damaged. We took away that last potential survivability from those Marines, and they were all killed. What was disgusting, and one of the things that's frustrating to me, if I go into a blue state, I am automatically labeled a Trumpster. If I go into a red state, I'm automatically labeled a Bidenista. What was funny is we did this series of stories down in Florida. It led to over $100 million in repairs on FDOT-owned roads. A third of all the guardrails in the state replaced. I do the story, and all the comments were absolutely vicious. They're like, why are you going after DeSantis, you leftist idiot? The next week, we come back with another story. This one's about the guardrails in Disney World. And it leads to $13 million worth of upgrades to every guardrail at Walt Disney World. And the same Facebook comments that the week before were calling me a leftist now are calling me a DeSantis right-wing nut job who's attacking Disney. But the week before, I was a leftist. And it just, what I have found is that red or blue, their guardrails suck and they don't care about you. But it was kind of just funny, just the response. But anyways, when I went to Caltrans, not so much Caltrans, I went to Governor Newsom, and his legislative staff, or his not legislative, executive staff, were awful to deal with. I just absolutely, they were prejudiced. I don't know how to put it. They could tell I had a little bit of a southern accent, and they totally dismissed it. I had 4 United States Marines killed in south of Los Angeles when they hit a guardrail that was damaged for 7 years, and they dismissed it because I was from Tennessee. Anyways, I just have found no matter where I go, I have, a Chris Sununu up in New Hampshire, absolute jerk on the Republican side. Gino Raimondo, very liberal in Rhode Island, treated me great. Governor Cooper, North Carolina, Democrat. I can't stand the guy because he's a jerk to me. DeSantis, a lightning rod politically, but for me, he's been extraordinarily helpful. Let me flip this around. I'm going to show you something. But anyways, I haven't found a pattern. I wish I could say, hey, red is good, blue is bad, blue is good, but red is bad. It just depends on what state I go into. But I have reported this about 3 or 4 times. And you can see the bolts are completely loose. And folks ask me, why don't you tighten those? And I had some very specific threats to me. I've had it from about 3 states suggesting, like, we will prosecute you if you do anything to our guardrails. So I'm not going to do it. I may one day do a live and just fix it and intend to get prosecuted, like civil disobedience. Not today. But so this is not bolted properly. It's related to a previous repair because you can see there's the block out there is a King block out. These are Mondo blockouts. I can tell this section of rail right here was damaged, like what I showed you earlier in the live. They replaced it They simply didn't tighten the bolts up, and they're all loose. And I've documented in the last year 5 fatalities in the state of Tennessee where bolts had fallen out at the fatal location. And so came out here yesterday for the 3rd time. I tied a big caution tape to it and made a video, and I just wrote loose bolts. If you can't have fun getting stuff done, what's the point? So that there is an attenuator. An attenuator is a much shorter device than W-beam guardrail. It's also much more expensive. That's a Trinity track, and frankly, it sucks. I don't like that terminal, or I don't like that crash cushion. My favorite crash cushion is the Hill & Smith Smart Cushion. I started getting access to state DOT archives for their crashes. I have a friend that can record it, and I can get the crashes, and the Smart Cushion just does so much better. And there's one caveat to that. I prefer, if I was going to hit something today, I prefer the Smart Cushion. About even worse than this one is something called the React 350, the React M. That's probably the 2nd terminal I would put out there in some states. And you're like, why would you pick the 10th worst performing crash cushion? It's because, like in a state like Arkansas or say Kentucky, if that gets hit and it's collapsed, now I'm going to be hitting a concrete barrier. The React, it gets smushed in and it goes back out and it's ready to be hit again. Now it doesn't perform very well, but in a state like Arkansas where that gets hit and then they leave it and you hit a concrete wall, I'll take the suckier level of protection knowing that it's going to bounce back after the crash, because they don't actually fix their products, which is insane. But the Smart Cushion is way better than that. It saves so many lives. It's kind of funny. That and the Scorpion truck-mounted attenuator caught so many crashes where somebody hits it super hard, like 60-some miles an hour, and they get out of the car and they're like, there's one guy, they call him Sunglass Guy, he's from Australia, hits a Scorpion TMA, he goes like this, looks around, and it was a white guy. If he was a black guy, I would have sworn it was Steve Urkel from Family Matters, going like, did I do that? Because I mean, just hits at 80 miles an hour, and he just pulls his sunglasses out, and you can see like he's looking around, and like if you've never seen the thing, look up Family Matters and Urkel. He's just this. He's always like, did I do that? Anyways, let's flip this around. We're coming up to, this is a really dangerous intersection. By documenting and getting the data and the stats, this is going to be a big improvement. I would have preferred a roundabout, because that's much better at slowing down traffic. Plus, it eliminates that left turn that is so dangerous. But they're putting a light here, which it will calm the traffic, decrease the number of crashes here, and I'd like to see some more lane or curve warnings, but it'll stop the traffic here, and then you won't be going 70 or 80 once you enter that death curve up there. So come down here. Here's a common thing. The contractor building this light damaged the guardrail. And a lot of times DOTs are hesitant to make their friends fix damage. But we're their friends, not the people doing this. They're getting paid thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars to do these projects. So if you damage a guardrail, you bought it, you're going to fix it. So I'm going to make sure they fix it. But we've got Trinity now Valtier soft stop. I'll tell you a little bit about this terminal. This is one, like if you've ever seen that a touchdown video where they're running, the receiver's running and he drops the ball like at the 5-yard line thinking he's in the end zone. You know, he's going to do something great, and he drops the ball at the 5-yard line. They dropped the ball at the 5-yard line. So the concept here, I love the concept for a couple of reasons. I think we got a Tesla over there. A story we're working on down Tampa related to a Tesla and this guardrail resulted in a fatality. The Tesla was incinerated, didn't maintain the anchor, but I get distracted. I'm sorry. I'll go in one direction and I go somewhere else. Hey, I've had a lot of friends honking at me this morning. But anyways, Trinity Noveltier soft stop. It's tethered to the ground. So we'll go through the evolution of guardrail. It used to be just that the end of the guardrail was a blunt end. You hit it and you got speared. Then they switched to two types. This is kind of like a breakaway cable terminal, but it was just basically anchored. And again, no energy absorbing capacity. Hopefully you could go into a clear zone, but a lot of people still got speared. Then they solved this problem. It was great. They solved the problem of guardrail spearing vehicles in the late 60s, early 70s. They created a turn down guardrail that attached to the ground. Wonderful concept. Except for one problem. The turn down, for every 6 times it's hit, it results in a fatality because instead of it spearing you, you hit it and you launch Dukes of Hazzard style. Sometimes I've seen them go 20 feet in the air and you end up dead. I've seen it so many times. So the turn down was a horrible system, but it eliminated the spearing hazard. But because it killed so many people, they threw the baby out with the bathwater. So the concept of a tethered to the ground system is great. And so what Trinity did was they created the tether. The issue is that during the crash testing, this was developed at Texas A&M. Roger Bly, Lance Bullard, a number of these guys, they developed this. They're the patent holders, and they run the crash tests. They have an inherent conflict of interest in this. Anyone who crash tests their own product, whether it's Boeing with the 737 MAX or the Trinity soft stop, if you have a financial interest, you cannot grade your own papers. They did that. On test 35, so you see these plates right here? I got the original crash testing, and I looked, and those weren't on there. There's some other alterations down here, and what happened in test 35, that's you're hitting at 62 miles an hour. You're hitting at what's called your beginning of your length of knee at a 25-degree angle, 62.5 miles an hour, 5,000-pound pickup. It's a very tough test to pass. And they hit there, and it redirects it, but it loses the anchorage. So it technically passes the test, but the anchor failed. And they passed the system. The big issue, though, is that in test 35, so you have two tests that are going to be your most important. That's going to be test 35, in my opinion, and test 31. Now, 30 is super important too. They're all important, but test 35 is definitely probably the hardest one to pass. The anchorage does not remain intact, and it flies 11.5 feet this way. So you can see if somebody hit right there, that guardrail is going to hit. That guardrail is going to detach and potentially hit me. The next thing was that in test 35, one of the most important hits, it cuts the fuel tank. And it cuts the fuel tank. And you can pull the Federal Highway Administration eligibility letter, and I kid you not, it says during test 35, it speared the fuel, or the fuel tank was cut. And when this is only preferable, it's only preferable that when you hit the guardrail, the fuel tank not be ruptured. I don't want to share getting speared, or I don't want to trade getting speared for getting rolled over to getting incinerated. That's insane. But it got worse. Continued looking at the crash test photos, and I kept seeing subtle changes in the system that weren't documented. And on test 31, which is hitting with a pickup truck like what you see there, a little bit lighter, 5,000 pounds, head on into the device, center of the vehicle. It's a pretty simple test to pass as far as the impact angles go and speed. But on test 31, 3-31, again, this device speared, made a small, it was a minimal tear in the fuel tank. Yeah, do you know what a minimal fuel leak and a little spark is going to do? It's going to burn you up and incinerate you. So on 2 of the 7 crash tests involving the Veltier, or the Trinity now Veltier soft stop, the 2 most critical crash tests, the fuel tank was compromised. And Federal Highway Administration says it's only preferable that not happen. So that's a big concern. The other thing is, so this one is running parallel to the road. Let me come up here. See how it runs parallel to the road? You can offset the system. Initially it was 1 foot, so you run a flare out 50 feet, and over that 50 feet you go from up there to right here, 1 foot. Now they say you can do it 2 feet. The testing they submitted for that was run with NCHRP Report 350 vehicles, which are vehicles that were, this was a standard published in 93. So they used 1993 crash testing standards and submitted it for crash testing standards reported in 2009. So the difference was the impact angles were less severe, and the vehicle weights went from 5,000 to 4,400. The other thing that I discovered, they're like, well, how did you know this? Did you get access? I saw your design drawings on the website. They added posts, so there were 9 posts, and these are strong posts. In those tests, they were using all steel yielding posts. They have that little hole down there. They're designed to fracture. So it wasn't even the same device. And so I wanted to really like the system because I like the tethering, but it doesn't always remain tethered. The other thing is my daughter's crash. My daughter Hannah was killed. My daughter Hannah was killed in a guardrail crash with a vehicle. Again, this was compromised crash testing in the sense that there was of interest. You can't crash test your own product regardless of what it is. It should never be the case. ATLA that certifies this ISO crash testing, frankly, I mean, they're complicit as far as I'm concerned. But, so my daughter Hannah was killed in one of these crashes where a guardrail entered the passenger compartment of her vehicle. My daughter was dead right there while the girl beside her was fine. But Hannah was in a non-tracking crash. So since the early 90s, we know about 15% of all the fatalities occur not, so they only test from the one side of the headlight, essentially the other side of the headlight. They test virtually nothing. But we know that these non-tracking hits near the driver's side door kill about 15 to 20% of the people. Tons of research, tons of 1993, I was a junior in high school. There were crash testing plans drawn up to run these crash tests at the Vanderbilt University in Nashville by a guy named Mac Ray. So we know this needs to be done, but we canceled. The side impact crash testing has been canceled dozens and dozens of times. It's 2024. It was 1993, more than 31 years. My daughter's birthday was yesterday on September 11th. She would have been 25. She was killed at 17. Very talented young girl. was friends, developed a friendship with Ariel Winter. Got to work on Burt Reynolds' final movie. Actually had some artwork in the trailer and the movie before her death, and the film was dedicated to her death. Hannah's mom and I got to meet Burt at the premiere. It was kind of cool, but Hannah was very talented. But she had a non-tracking impact, so the terminal that she had again was different device, but when she hit the end, it ended up coming into the vehicle after it had fully telescoped and then had no more telescoping capabilities. It entered the passenger compartment and she was killed. So this here, a tethered system, eliminates the possibility, as long as the tether remains intact, of an outcome like what we saw in Hannah's crash. So for me, it's personal. I like the concept. I want this to work. Desperately want this to work, but I feel like they dropped the football at the 5-yard line. And just one other thing I'll point out, and then I'm going to move down here and talk to you about what I wanted to talk to you about. The narrow impact head. Typically, I would like big impact heads because I'm going to actually go down here past where they had the person pulled over and show you something. Then I'm going to come back, show you that last thing. I like narrow impact heads for few specific scenarios, but when I was a nurse, I had an Amish guy that fell out of a tree, ended up landing on his feet, and ended up with compression fractures throughout his entire body. And because you're going to fall, land with your entire body, as many points of contact with the ground. The narrow impact head is more like a battering ram, in my opinion. And so I like bigger impact heads, no matter what. This, though, is very good when you have very limited real estate. There's a guardrail out in Tellico Village, right off State Route 444. It's been hit about 10 times. They're usually nuisance hits, but there's no real estate. And that impact head is 20 inches wide, so it's way out here. And it's almost touching the white line out there. And it gets hit all the time in what are generally nuisance hits, so somebody hits it and drives away. The issue is that now that thing is completely compromised. And that Tellico Village, their POA, is now responsible for a $4,500, maybe a $5,000 repair. It's minimal damage, but now they have a $5,000 repair on their hands, because in the state of Tennessee, we end up replacing the entire 50 feet, regardless of the damage. $5,000 repair coming out of their pocket. I went out and talked to him because it got hit again recently, and I was like, use a soft stop, for crying out loud. And he's like, why? I said, it's only 7 inches wide versus the 20 inches wide. It's like horseshoes and hand grenades. The narrower the impact head, the less likely it's going to be to get impacted in those nuisance hits. It's one of the few areas where I would suggest using a soft stop. I don't like conflicts of interest in crash testing. I do really like the tethering. The other thing that's common to the SGET and the MSKT, this rail, what happens is that this head is just kind of sitting here. It's attached to that lower post there, but it's mobilized and it's tethered there. So this head will move down the rail, moves down the rail. And you can see it squishes the rail down like that. That's how it absorbs the kinetic energy. It squishes that W down to a very narrow squashed rail. But what I like about this, what I like about the SGET, what I like about the MSKT, is that it's not inherently limited to how far it could go. In theory, you can feed guardrail forever through this end of you can feed W beam guardrail through this end of the feeder chute and out that side forever. And I want that in a system. I don't think we should be installing guardrails that were only tested to 62 miles an hour on a roadside where the speed is 70 and you can only go 37.5 feet, but you need 100 feet of guardrail. It's personal. When you have a system that can only go 37.5 feet, it goes 37.5 feet, punches through the car, and kills your daughter. You want a system that has excess capacity built into it. Let's continue on down this road. Now, this is one of the most dangerous crosswalks. And I will show you how I cross this crosswalk. I will walk across here. They will run me over on the right. I've almost had it happen many times. They'll run me over from here. They'll just make the turn, not stop. They'll make the left-hand turn and not stop. They'll come straight across and not stop, or they'll make the right-hand turn there. So I will generally, I'm watching that white car right there because he's not going to stop for me. He will run me over. But when I do this, I am 360 degrees every angle because I have almost been hit here probably 50 to 100 times. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. So I'm going to go up here. I want to show you something that I discovered. There's a fatal guardrail crash in Palm Beach County, Florida, earlier in, that's not safe. It's a bike path, but normally they'd put a buffer head there, nothing that's going to absorb any energy. Somebody riding a bike who happens to just fall right there, hits that. We go from having a bad day to having a dead day. I prefer bad days, not dead days. So the Palm Beach County crash found some recent problems. NTSB is investigating this. I sent my findings over to the NTSB chair. Really great person. I've told the story. I love Jen Homendy. Jen came out of the Congress Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. She was on the Democrat side of the aisle, but she was appointed to NTSB by President Trump, a Republican. So he appoints her to NTSB, comes out of Transport Dems, and so truly bipartisan. She was elevated to chair by Biden. So the only person in the administration with those kind of credentials, that bipartisan credentials, really a person of the people, stands up for the victims. Really great person, Jen is. I met with her about a year and a half ago. I'm like, Jen, we got to look at guardrail crashes in a more traditional sense. It's the first true guardrail crash. Another improper sign right there. Don't attach to the post. No 4 feet of lateral deflection. But 9 people dead in a crash. 1 survivor down in Florida. Bunch of things went wrong. Payless, the rental company, seemed to have some defects with their car. Ford might have had some vehicle problems. The driver had the vehicle overloaded, 10 people in a Ford Explorer, 7 seats. But the issue is that in that crash, yes, if there were only 7 people, we would have only had 6 dead. But we had 9 dead because they overloaded it. So the last 3 fatalities, yeah, you can put those potentially on the driver. There's some issues with the steering defect potential, but I found that right at the point of impact, they had field drilled a hole, and that's what a hole should look like, but they had just drilled a hole, and you want this mushroom bolt right there to pull through the rail so that the rail stays up, and in that situation, the rail came over. I don't know that would be enough to have made the difference in that crash, but I hate seeing a field drilled hole where 9 people died. And I saw the same thing in a crash in the wine country of Australia where a bus hit it. I don't like seeing those kind of defects. But on the trailing end, I'll have to show you in just a second. I'll show you something different. Here, you see there's a post missing. There's right here, there's no markings in the road. Let me see. Let's come over here. Right there. There it is. You see the pipe? There's a pipe that runs right underneath that post. So they pulled the post up. Let me show you what they did. So no post there, so there's going to be more deflection in this area right here, this 12.5 feet without the post. So starting up here, You see 6-foot spacing. One rail right there. Now you have two. So they've nested two 25-foot panels together. And again, two 25 panels together. Skip the post because we have something underneath the ground and we can't pound the post in. We don't want to just cut it. And then we're back to standard W-beam. An engineer did their calculations, and that's what they did. They nested the guardrail so that they could control that lateral deflection right there, omitted the post, didn't hit the pipe, didn't cut the post like what some people that commit fraud do, and that's why you have that gap there. So let's continue on up. This is becoming a real problem in the guardrail industry. A lot of fiber. I don't know if this is LCUB running their fiber for their fiber optic internet, but they're installing guardrail or fiber very close to the guardrails, and that's 41 inches below ground. And when that gets hit, it's potentially snagging their wires, or it makes installation of the guardrails very, very difficult. One thing I would warn anyone installing guardrail: call before you dig. I have seen multiple, there have been 2 incidents that I am aware of where a guardrail contractor pounded one of these posts into an electrical line. One of them resulted in a fatality. You don't want to see one of your guys go home dead in a body bag because you pounded a guardrail post into a high tension underground line. Let's continue on down, and I want to show you what I found down at that fatal incident in Florida. Sorry, I'm trying to get my battery pack going here. Steve, the guardrail guy. That there, you see that post? See how it's twisted and cut? That was somebody doing work here on a tractor, and they snagged that post and pulled it out. See how it pulled it right out of that's what you want to see right there. But they snagged it, pulled it out, and one important thing I think with our mowers and with our people doing maintenance like this is to try to create a restorative culture rather than just punitive, where if you're going to just punish them for doing something dumb like this, they have to do some way to correct this. I'm not saying just let them off the hook, but I would rather be lenient and know about the damage than be extraordinarily punitive, have the person hide the damage from me, and end up with somebody getting hurt because they didn't let us know, hey, look, we hit it, I'm sorry. So I want to balance a culture, especially with DOT, where we are not just being punitive with our contractors. You have to hold them to account, but you don't want to be just completely vindictive to the point where they won't report their damage. So there's an SCAT guardrail. I'm going to show you that. And maybe, what time is it? 9:47. My daughter's coming home from college today, so I got to head home here shortly. But I've got time. So I may just walk around the block. I'll show you some city guardrails. I'll talk about what I would do in a city with my guardrails, because I wouldn't have many guardrails in a city, because I'm going to lower my speed limit in my pedestrian areas, and it's going to be unnecessary. Because if you need guardrails in your residential areas, you got some other problem. You have a kinetic energy problem, which is a speed issue typically, not a guardrail issue. So we have an SCAT here. It's a lot better system than what I showed you earlier with the Trinity ET-Plus. Uses a similar grabber bar anchor system. Let me show you. I talked about the bearing plate very early in my video. That there, you see how that bearing plate is 5 inches on the top and 3 on the bottom? You can't install this one wrong, because It's got these two holes here, and you have to put it this way. There's also something that fits in to that hole right there. It only goes one way. If you have a part that has to be installed a certain way, making it so that it can only go one way is so imperative. Let me show this feeder chute. I showed you one earlier on a different device that right there is about 2 inches wide. On the other device, it's only about 1 inch, and these bolts get stuck in the feeder chute, and it's been involved in a lot of fatalities. I talked about the length. Get rid of this. You don't put that kind of stuff on a guardrail. I'll pick that up and take it with me. You don't put that kind of stuff on a guardrail. It's kind of like a turtle on a fence. That sucker didn't get there on his own. But I get distracted. Those bolts will go right through that chute. This has a wood post here. Here's an interesting thing. You see how tightly those rings are? This here, take a look at this one. This one's a lot tighter rings than this one here. You see it? You see it? This post here, because that you want to make sure that's one pre-drilled, and then these are tighter rings. You can't substitute another guardrail wooden post because this has 15% more rings, and it will hold this long term for 15 or 20 years. Those extra rings, you think, oh, it's just wood. It's not just wood. This is so finely engineered, it's not funny. The other thing is, I talked about how that other system that I don't care for only has the side flanges. This goes all the way around. It's much better at keeping the impact head of our device engaged with our vehicle. This again is similar to the system I just showed you. You hit right here, it mobilizes the impact head. The W beam guardrail then feeds through that feeder chute, and it comes out here, it gets squashed, and it creates kind of like a ribbon. It's almost artistic. I have one. It just shoots, it shoots to the heavens. It's, I call it, if you ever played Duck Hunter, it's a bird killer task. But, because I mean, if there was a bird up there, but it's just like, somebody could set it to music. It's like, do, 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 do. Sorry, I'm not a musician, and I'm a little bit pitchy. But it was just really beautiful of a test. It's very controlled, very, you know exactly, it goes a foot. It's about 14,000 kip feet of energy that's dissipated. Another foot, same thing. Another foot, same thing. You know how much energy you're transferring into this rail, so it's very predictable. This is designed to aid in getting that head level. The tail end of it, it's not gonna, I've checked with the guy that developed it. Called up Don, he's got 9 kids, I got 10 kids. Don's an interesting character, but said it's not going to, it's just a PVC pipe. We don't think it's gonna, we've done the analysis, it's not gonna, but best practice is a fidelity to doing it right. Simply cut that off at the end and remove the PVC pipe. It's not that hard, but it's like, you have to have a complete fidelity to 100% doing it right every single time. Because if you compromise on something simple, like just not cutting that strap, you'll compromise elsewhere. But if you won't compromise on that, you're not going to compromise on anything else. Going back to another thing on the SCAT, right here, sticker there. Now this is a huge victory. I got this victory with Spig early on. You see that sticker right there? SCAT head goes with SCAT rail. You see how it says front? That little thing, I have so many friends whose kids would be alive today had rails and heads not been mixed together. That little sticker saves lives. And the thing is, when I get that sticker, when I get the sticker on the soft stop, when I get them labeling the MSKT, it builds momentum for conspicuous on-product labeling. That was a huge victory. I'm going to go ahead and go back over there. I don't like being out there with my back turned to the road. That is going to be key to the guardrail industry. Should be common sense. I could go to most DOTs in America and say, hey, what do you have at the corner of St. Thomas and US 321? And they're not going to know what they have. They don't know. They have billions of dollars worth of assets. They don't know what's there. They don't know where it is, or if it's been installed right, or if it's in good working order. A SPIG crash tested the system, put an RFID tag on it. Unfortunately, most of our states don't use the RFID, but it's there, and that is how we're going to be able to run true in-service performance. Because one of the things I've pushed since we lost Hannah was that we need to do in-service performance. Now, this isn't me saying this. This is documents I've read since the early 40s saying you need to study the performance of your guardrails. But it really goes back to, let me flip this around, the scientific method, which is back to Alexandria and before the birth of Christ. So this is not anything new. But when you come up with a system, you develop it, you run all your experiments, you implement it, and then you test your theory, which is in-service performance. That's called the scientific method. And I've pointed it out many times. If you don't do all of the scientific method, if you only do the crash testing and the development, get it out on the road, and don't validate that your system is actually performing right, if you leave anything, let's just leave the OD off, the scientific method. What you end up with is scientific meth. And that's very instructive, folks. So I think we should be practicing the scientific method, actually making sure that when we put the device out on the roadside that it's working. And the RFID tag, like what I showed you, is going to be key. I came down here to show you this. In that fatality in Florida with 9 dead, the trailing end, you see how there's 3 holes right there and 1 lag screw? Well, that's designed so, like, if your head is this way and you need to put the lag screw, use that hole, you can put the lag screw there, you can put it there, or you can put it there. Now, this one in Florida, where the 9 were killed, now it hit on that end, so it didn't have any impact on the crash. But, I kid you not, they put a bolt there, or a lag screw there, a lag screw there, and a lag screw there. So while 9 died on the other end of the guardrail, the other end that's wasn't impacted is just as bad. They had literally 1, 2, 3 there. I don't know about the bottom, but they probably had 3 down there. And so the other end, where 9 people died, is installed wrong. The bearing plate down in Florida there, upside down. Pretty critical issue. The soil tube on that ET-2000, it's not an SCAD, it's an ET-2000, the granddaddy of all guardrail systems, was about 8 inches higher than it should be. So if it's higher than 4, and this is getting close, but I think it's okay. If it's higher than 4, it can snag, especially like that sedan. If it's 8 inches high, it will snag you, so it'll stop your momentum. It'll artificially induce a kink right here. Even on good systems, that kink will come around the front of the vehicle. I had a situation in Middle Tennessee, Interstate 65. I've gotten this call 3 times in the last 9 months. My grandson was cut in half, or my friend was cut in half, or it's a pretty awful call to get, especially when something stupid like not pounding your soil tube or post down far enough is at stake, or you didn't put the backfill in. It's silly, but you can cut somebody in half, and I've seen it. So anyways, the trailing end of that one in Florida where the 9 were killed and went into the canal, soil tube too high, bearing plate upside down, and they used, instead of just using one of the holes, gives you 3 holes to use and 1 bolt. They went ahead and got 2 more bolts, put them all in there. Here's something. Perfect rule. Every guardrail contractor in America needs to listen to me. Basic math. Basic math when dealing with the guardrail. 2 things. Addition and subtraction. When you have a guardrail end terminal, you install it exactly as designed and crash tested. You never, ever do you do addition or subtraction. You don't add parts like they did down in Florida. No putting a bolt there and a bolt there. And you don't subtract from this. You don't take, so here we have a steel yielding post. You don't substitute, let me turn that, sorry. You don't take away a steel yielding post and use a standard post. You don't deviate from the design. You don't add bolts here. You don't take away a post there. No addition or subtraction when installing your guardrail, and we could save an awful lot of lives. Let's continue onward. It's Steve Eimers. I'm the guardrail guy. My daughter Hannah was killed in a guardrail crash. Just out for a walk. Thought I would walk and talk, show you a bunch of little things. This right here, drain, guardrail end terminal. I've seen a lot of these crashes. Recently caught an ugly one involving a soft stop down in Nashville. Drain was clogged, went right into the guardrail, rolled over. We simply created a big giant mud puddle, and water pooled on the road, and they went into the guardrail. Similar impact up in Louisville, Kentucky. Recently, pooling water in the median, new project. Went through the rail, the individual was killed, and I don't like what the performance was with the guardrail, but the underlying problem is that I don't think the crash happens but for the pooling water. One of the things you'll often hear me talk about is a but-for crash. And you'll be like, middle schooler, what's a but-for? But-for crash means but for this issue or but for that issue, the crash doesn't happen. But for the inadequate drainage on I-71, they don't hit the pool of water, they don't go through the guardrail, and nobody dies. So in a but-for crash, you eliminate the but-for, and you don't get that fatal outcome. Anytime you see a but-for crash, I would challenge you, contact an attorney, have the case investigated, because you can't do that investigation. Again, we have utilities here, omit a post, they nest 2 panels together, and they nested 2 panels here. That allows them to omit that post, not go into their electrical system, and there's their engineering solution. Here's another scenario. They've widened this road. They have a median there, and that guardrail end terminal. That was there when this was just a 2-lane road. That gets damaged. I personally don't think they should put a new guardrail end terminal up. They should put an anchor in there, because you're not going to impact that under as tested conditions, and you're wasting probably $3,000. We have another sign up here. That is attached to a W-beam guardrail post. That's a breakaway sign that is no longer breakaway. It's attached to a 54-pound post that is 9 pounds per foot, extending, again, 41 inches underground, and we got some Cards Against Humanity. I'm gonna leave those flipped over because I'm family-friendly channel, but that's no longer breakaway. Let's just see. It's just a scenic route. You have a non-breakaway structure. That should be open fence because you can't get that. But that's just nonsense. And it's not a one-off here. I've actually found, I think, 10 to 20 of those today. When you have a red line or you have a deviation from your standard, that's a one-off. When you have 20 in a row, that's called having a standard and not complying with it and just doing whatever you want. It's just nonsense. So I'm heading into Lenoir City, Tennessee, Lenoir. I was just looking at a guardrail up in, it's SACO, Maine. I would say Saco, but I think it's Saco. I looked it up because I was doing a story with ABC in Boston once about Peabody, Massachusetts. It's Peabody. I'm like, Peabody. He's like, it's Peabody. I'm like, there's no I in there. He's like, it's Peabody. You'll sound like an idiot. So it was Peabody, Massachusetts. Saco, Maine. Lenoir City, even though it should be Lenoir City. But I'm going to go down US 11, the Dixie-Lee Highway, and then I'll cut through some neighborhoods, take a look at some neighborhood guardrails. In particular, I'm having a problem with my power bank here. So I'm going to see, hold on. You're going to see me take my phone cover off, so it might be, stick with me for a second. I'm going to see if I can get a little better connection by removing my protector. Sorry, I get some folks who are like, you're not very professional at streaming. I'm sorry, I didn't set out to be a streamer. I'm just here trying to save lives. Now here's an issue. We have a cosmetic feature. Lenoir City, established 1907. We have a slip lane. You're risking your life trying to cross this, but your line of sight is obstructed. So they don't even see you here till you get out here. You can't tell whether you're going to get run over. It's again how we discount the value of a pedestrian life. Let me see if I can pop this out of the thing and get a good connection on my phone. Hopefully I don't drop this sucker, and that would be awful to take it out of my protective case and break my phone. Alright, I've got a better connection. If I end up losing my battery, we may end up having to cut the live stream. Anyway, workers, I want to do a little free library like what you see up there. Hannah loved the little free library lets you get a book out of it free. It's just kind of for neighborhoods. It builds community. But I want to build one that's a TARDIS and set that up. And Hannah had so many books. Put some of her books out there. Initially, when you're going through grief, you want to cling to everything. I'm talking like even wrappers. You're like, no, that was the last candy bar she ate. I can't throw it out. And you cling to every book. Some of them I don't want to read. And I had a camera. My daughter Alexis is coming home from college. This was progress for me on an emotional level. Coming home from college, Hannah had a really nice digital camera. It's still pretty good. But I just sat it in a closet for what an idiot I am, and I finally was able to, it's just grief. I was finally able to come to the place where I was like, use this, and everything. Are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, it'd be stupid to let this thing run for the rest of its life until it's no more useful. I enjoy using a camera to make shorts and take pictures and take photos instead of just sitting on my shelf. But anyways, I want to do it, but I want to build it like a TARDIS. I thought that would be cool because Hannah loved Doctor Who. I'm not a fan of it. It doesn't make a lick of sense to me. Probably start getting some hate here. Steve the Guardrail Guy, walking. One of the things by doing all this walking, I have lost so much weight. When I first started YouTube, it's okay when you're getting only 1,000 views. All of a sudden you get 1,000,000 views and you realize, oh, I'm a little bit heavier than I realized on camera. And now, I want like 12 million people know I need to go on maybe not eat so much pizza and soda. So your pride gets a hold of you. So I've been walking so much, avoiding the sodas, and have dropped a little bit of weight. But we're just walking through Lenoir City, Tennessee. Here, these are more, we're going to get to some, I'm going to turn left up here. I'm having an issue with this power bank, so if I have to cut out early, I'm at 12%. I should have a full battery. There we got a connection. I'm going to show you a couple of city guardrails. So one of the things a guardrail should be, this is testing, one of the things I've learned, nobody cares what Steve says. I am not an engineer. I am a YouTuber. But when I repeat their design drawings and their crash testing and read their crash test reports to them, they don't have a leg to stand on. It goes back to, there's a book. I'm not a big fan of the guy, but Saul Alinsky, The Rules for Radicals. So you make them live by their own set of rules. And that's what I do. I get their rules, which is their design drawings, their installation manuals, and their crash testing. And I simply show them, hey, you're not obeying your own rules. And you can choose to look the other way, folks. Kind of like William Wilberforce talked about, who it was his advocacy that kind of ended the African slave trade. Or you can choose to look the other way, but you can't say you didn't know. So that's kind of what I like doing with these state DOT officials, federal highway officials, local municipalities. It's like, here's your crash testing, and if you look the other way, it's on you. It's on you. And make them own it. And in places where there's more liability, they have to do it. So when PennDOT's a good example. The Casey decision was unreal. This was a decision that came down from the Pennsylvania Supreme Court that said that the department did not have a duty to place a guardrail. So like if there's a hazard, they don't have to protect you from the hazard. They don't have to. They have no duty to do that. But if they do attempt to protect you from the hazard, they have to put a crash-worthy terminal, crash-worthy guardrail. It's got to meet the modern standard. So you can see here, we have a house, we're in a city, a double blunt end, it's 40 feet long. Crash testing says you have to have a 75-foot guardrail, and it's got to be anchored on either end. So if you hit that one, that's just a piece of steel on the side of the road. It's not going to stop anything. The issue is we built up what was an old, just a goat path into a road. You got a straight approach. An object in motion tends to stay in motion and go directly into the house. When those objects get faster, like we did when we moved from horse and buggy to, which literally Lenoir Mill was right up here, so it was horse and buggy back during the Civil War, to these big vehicles. All we did was pave the road. So you come up here, our object in motion goes directly into the house. That guardrail is not going to do anything to protect you. Let's continue on down here. I'm going to turn left and go this older section of Lenoir City. A lot of there's a great Mexican deli up here, or not deli, bakery, unreal pastries. But I generally have to avoid that place, or I buy too many pastries and all my walking goes for naught. We got a Boston Terrier over there who's pretty vocal. I've got a kind of a Western store here, but primarily again, a Mexican supermarket, large Hispanic population. Now let's talk about, you're like, he's going to talk about racial. I want to talk about cultural implications of mass casualty incidents and guardrails. Typically, almost exclusively, when I find a crash involving a guardrail that involves 4 or more fatalities, it is almost always a Hispanic family or an immigrant family. If it's not Hispanic, it's almost always immigrant. And it's one of the areas, I don't speak Spanish. I wish I did. The underlying issue that I see, I had a crash in Florida, 2 pickups, both hit the center median guardrail, 4 dead in one vehicle, 4 walked away without really serious injuries. And one was, I don't know what, the vehicle that had the 4 fatalities, again, was Hispanic. And there's a cultural element when we adopted our boys from Ukraine where Ukrainians don't typically use seatbelts. And most of the mass fatality events that I have documented in the United States involves an immigrant family with a lack of seatbelt use. If you do work in the immigrant community, if you do work in the Hispanic community, stressing that yes, we understand that culturally this was not normative to use a seatbelt where you came from, it is here. And the reason we do is because it saves lives. Could instantly cut the fatality rate with guardrail by 25% with seatbelt use. The area we're going to see the greatest advances in fatality reduction is if we could engage with the Hispanic community and stress seatbelt use. It's just one of those areas I'd love to be able to do. I say hola, but I don't have the outreach capabilities. So if you know anyone that does work in that community, with that people group, those people groups, any immigrant community, stress seatbelt use, because it's awful to see somebody. I had a Kurdish family that I was documenting a crash up in Pennsylvania. The entire family, they're all the wives and mothers, 5 of them, dead right there. They escaped the Kurds. There's no friend of the Kurds but the mountains. They escaped the torment of Turkey and Iraq and the wars and died in a guardrail crash in Pennsylvania in the United States. We got to figure out a way to get folks buckled up. And anyways, that's just me on my soapbox. But you investigate a crash where you find 4 people dead or 6 people dead, we'll talk. If you don't think you should buckle up, we'll talk. But that's one of those areas where I'd love to be able to help. Let's see here. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. Appreciate everyone who's jumped on here with me. 552 of you right now. Did a live earlier this week. Got 181,000 different people come on at any one point in time. Had a lot of folks from all over the world join me on that one. Going across the railroad tracks. I'm doubling back. You'll see. If you've been with me a little while, you'll see where I was. I'm gonna watch this tractor trailer. I'm gonna step off there's no sidewalks here. I have no desire to end up underneath a tractor trailer as a pedestrian. Hey, I'll tell you a quick story. I'm a fan of litigation. I know I'm gonna kick and make somebody angry with that. But congrats to Johnny Simon and his dad. They just there was a crash in Missouri. The vehicle went under the car, or what? The car went under the tractor trailer in an underride crash. And Wabash knew that, hey, listen, we should build a more robust rear guard. It's a $6 million judgment for each person, so a total of $12 million. And it's a nuclear verdict, folks. $450 million in punitive damages. Total award, $462 million. That is why when I started, before I had suffered loss, before I had seen torts and seen how some of our corporate entities, I'll tip my hand. I once tried naming a kid in eastern Ukraine, went before a former communist judge and tried to name him Reagan. I'm a fan of Hayek. I'm a fan of Milton Friedman. I also know that litigation is a very effective tool at teaching big corporations that you don't play games. So one of the things, I greatly disfavor regulation, and I very much love litigation. So most of the Republicans don't like me, and most of the Democrats don't like me. But congrats to Johnny and his dad and the families on that $462 million verdict. That's what does real change. Doing a live where a bunch of people get on there, getting a video with 15 million people, doing news stories that win Emmys. That they don't like it. But getting a $462 million verdict, they hate that. And they often, what they're doing is they're doing risk-benefit calculation. And you got to change the numbers for them. If what they value is money, you change the equation and you change the culture. And you want to bet that Wabash and all these different trucking companies saw that verdict, and they're going to start buying better rear guards. It's going to make a difference on the roadside at some point. That's how we build a better system. So if you are ever hurt in a guardrail crash, feel free to reach out to me. I am not an attorney. I am not an engineer, but I can help you. One thing I've learned, you do not want to talk. If they're like on TV saying, hey, we will turn your wreck into a check, they are an idiot. There's certain things that need to happen in a guardrail crash. You need to secure the vehicle. You need to secure the rail. You need to have the best experts. You need a good attorney that is familiar with the arguments. They're going to raise the Boyle defense. These aren't defense contractors. Turgeon versus Trinity proved that. They're not compliant with the federal regulation. Imers v. Velmont et al. Proved that. That's me. That was a motion to reconsider. But there's case law. I found a crash one time. Orphan child, 3 years old, was injured in the crash. Mom's dead. I can't make the situation better. But if I can get that family to hire an attorney, again, dog in the fight, I don't care who they hire. I just want them to be able to make a recovery. If they make a recovery, I can secure that child's entire future. I can make sure they can go to university. I can make sure they have the family support and counseling support that they need. And so, definitely, I think everyone who's hurt in a crash owes it to the dead, or owes it to themselves if they're hurt, but owes it to the dead. Just have somebody investigate it. I'm not saying sue for the sake of suing. Sue because you don't like that you lost someone. I'm saying if there was a but for, and I've talked about this earlier, there's a but for in that crash, but for the fact that they added parts to this guardrail, but for the fact they didn't clean their drains and created a massive hole and pothole, and there'd been 6 other crashes they knew about. There's some negligence there. And by holding them accountable, you can help prevent the next fatality. So I'm coming up Elm Hill, and this is the fight. This is 2 hours and 15 minutes. This is what I really came out here to talk to you about. Is Elm Hill Road is A road in Lenore City, Tennessee, it's owned by the city, and you can kind of tell. You don't see any lines on the side here. They were there at one point, but they're no longer there. No center lines. But this goes into US 321, which is a state roadway. And so one of the things when you're reporting guardrails is you got to know the owner of the guardrail. It's on a state highway, it's a state highway guardrail. If it's on a local road, it's the local road. It's Lenore City's guardrail, except for within the right-of-way. And so what Tennessee DOT has been doing is they'll often install guardrails. So we're coming up here 1,500 feet to the work zone. They're installing guardrails on a city-owned road. And then, so they pay for it, they install it, but they're often getting near 100% reimbursement on those guardrails. But then when the guardrail's damaged, they dump that repair onto the local municipality. So I'm going to show you up here, I'll show you a couple things. What I'm trying to do is win this fight with the state of Tennessee's DOT. And if I win it here in Lenore City, if I win it right where I'm about to show you, I will win it in all 95 counties. And if I can set the precedent here in Tennessee, and if I can show mayors and I can show county executives that you don't have to, you can fight back against the state DOT against this kind of nonsense, because what happens is the state installs the thing and then tries to saddle you with the repair. So I have 2 guardrail end terminals up here that were installed by the state of Tennessee. They admit it. I have the contract. They paid for these. But somebody has recently stolen the bearing plates off these 2. There's a face damage on both sides. Total repair cost is about $15,000. Now I have a 7-year-old son who plays Little League ball here, and $15,000 to fix these guardrails that the state put in, that they're the state's guardrails, or $15,000 to do upgrades to his Little League ball field, help with the drainage. You know, they're the state's guardrails. The state needs to pay for their stuff. These guys, I'll tell you, I was up in D.C. at a conference for AASHTO, which is the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials. 52, 53 state DOTs, because they count DC and Puerto Rico and I think Guam. And these guys, oh, you want to talk, I almost needed a fainting couch, because they would just, if you've seen Sweet Brown, oh, Lord Jesus, I got bronchitis. I mean, you want to talk about being a bunch of babies. When it comes to unfunded mandates, our state DOTs, they lose it when the feds say, hey, listen, you got to do this, you got to spend this money. And they say, well, send us the money and we'll do it. And send us the repair, maintenance. But they lose it. Well, they do this to the local municipalities all the time. So again, city highway or city road in Lenore City, way up there at that intersection, is a state highway. But, so there was actually a TDOT worker down here yesterday. He saw me show up. They don't want to end up on any of my videos. I just had one recently get about 2.5 million views between YouTube and TikTok. And I don't mean to start. They get me going and I get upset. And I make a video and then they end up on my YouTube and then you all watch it. And so I'm trying not to. So I was kicking around in this dirt looking for a surveying mark, a right-of-way concrete marker, because you can see now white lines right here. TDOT maintains from right here onward. So those $15,000 worth of guardrails that need to be repaired, that should be done by TDOT. And they're saying, no, we can't do it. We can't even enter it into our computer. We can't do it because it's the Lenore City government's responsibility. I'm like, it's your right of way. You paid for the guardrails, you installed them, you fixed them. They're like, no. I'm going back and forth. I've got state representatives involved. I've got the mayors of multiple counties and cities involved. I've got state senators involved. And I'm going to win the battle because they're their guardrails. It's within their right of way. It might be a city-owned road, but they installed them. They paid for them. I've got the contracts. But you can see here, somebody recently stole the critical anchor for the system here and there. And that's a crime that's occurred within the last 6 months. Or not 6 months, 2 months. Because I shoot here regularly because it's a pretty safe place with a specific terminal I want to shoot. But there's some face damage there and there's a face damage there. And I was going back and forth with them. I've been going back and forth. And yesterday, I found my smoking gun for this location because I was digging in this parking area looking for the surveyor's mark because I want to win this battle. If I can win it here, I'll win it across the state of Tennessee, and I'll hold the DOT in Tennessee accountable for these repairs, and I will save our local counties. Gosh, if I win this fight, this is way more than $15,000. I will save our local cities and counties probably $2 to $3 million annually by forcing the state DOT to make the repairs on roadside safety hardware and other assets that they installed. Came out here, this was covered up with bushes, and what do we have here but an old HYRW. That is a state highway right-of-way, and the arrow is right here, and you can see that's called checkmate. I sent that over to Amber Kelso with Lenore City, and Representative Fritz is out of town right now, but I feel like that's checkmate, folks. And I'm gonna force TDOT. I am gonna win. They're gonna fix these because they installed them. They're within their right of way, and they're pulling the same stunt. I'm fighting them in Wilson County right now, Smith County, Hamilton County, Polk County. Sound like Forrest Gump. Fighting them in Polk County. I'm fighting them in Knox County, Loudoun County, Blount County. Just an issue everywhere, and it's not a Tennessee exclusive issue. You can see here again, somebody took the bearing plate. This is a sucky terminal if there ever was one. It's a slotted rail terminal, and I may have to cut short here because I'm losing my battery backup. My cable is not connecting as well. Let me see if I can maintain my cable, but I'll probably just walk up here but that's the big fight that I'm fighting with Tennessee DOT right now, which is trying to clarify ownership of guardrails. And it's not just guardrails, surface maintenance, signage on a local owned road, but within Tennessee DOT's legal right of way. If I can win that battle, I'm gonna have every mayor, every county executive in the state on my side. It's Steve the Guardrail Guy. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna sign off here because I can not maintain my battery connection. But thanks for joining me. Y'all have a great day. We'll see you on my lives or on short here soon. Thank you. Have a great day.